Hello and welcome to bridge number 15 over the Caldon Canal in Stoke-on-Trent. We have a cracking ride in store today. We're going to head up the Caldon Canal to Leek, where we will jump onto a disused railway line and head past a reservoir that once featured in a Top Gear challenge. We'll then skirt past the Peak District, onto the Macclesfield Canal, and then another disused rail line to make our way back to our start point in Stoke-on-Trent. Our start point for the ride is right next to Birch's Head Academy, but with this being a loop, your start point could be anywhere on the ride. So let's get going and start to make our way up the Caldon Canal. We're going to be on the Caldon Canal for just under 9 miles today, and the section of canal that runs through Stoke-on-Trent has this fantastic tarmac towpath, which you could definitely ride on a road bike. However, we are going to be hitting some rougher terrain later on in the ride, so I'm riding my trusty gravel bike with its 40mm tyres. This first part of the Caldon Canal makes up part of Route 550 of the National Cycle Network, and this is why it's got such a good surface. After passing under the modern A53 road bridge, which is the main road to Leek, we carry on a little further along the canal and come across an old railway bridge. This is the old Stoke to Leek line, which opened in 1867. Much like the canal that we're using, it was built to transport limestone from the Caldon quarries down to the potteries and the industrial Midlands further south, with limestone being an important part of pottery and steel production. Freight traffic continued on the line right up until 1988, long after passenger services had ceased. The line was never officially closed, just mothballed. The tracks were never ripped up, and so if you go on top of the bridge, you can still see the tracks crossing over the canal and beyond. In 2023, the Conservative government of the time announced this line would be reopened, but unfortunately since then, the new Labour government has decided that this won't be happening. As the canal starts to snake its way around Baddeley Green, it feels very rural, even though we are still technically in the city of Stoke-on-Trent. This certainly wouldn't be a bad place to moor up. That rural feel, but close to the city amenities. At Norton-le-Moors, we come across the first of 6 locks that we'll be making our way up today.
Good, thank you.
The path does get a little steep here, but it's perfectly rideable, just make sure you're in a low gear. Although the main purpose of the Caldon Canal was to transport limestone, it also had a secondary purpose, and that was to supply water from the Peak District down to the Trent and Mersey Canal, which it connects to at Etruria in Stoke-on-Trent. And as we pass by this lock, you can hear the vast amount of water heading down the spillway at the side, making its way down to the Trent and Mersey Canal. There's a few lift bridges along the length of the Caldon Canal, and this first one that we pass provides farm access and is still in use, but the second one we pass here is permanently open, no longer being needed. Not far after passing by that unused lift bridge, we head up lock number 2 and come to the rather grand looking Stockton Brook Waterworks. This was built in 1884 by the Staffordshire Potteries Waterworks Company in order to supply clean drinking water to the North Staffordshire area. Steam engines were used to pump water from up to 300 feet below the surface. The steam engines were replaced with electric pumps in 1936, and the building was eventually decommissioned by Severn Trent Water in 2004. It's currently under restoration to use as a public facility. Moving on from the waterworks, the remaining 4 locks come thick and fast, and we also pass under a few bridges. Here again we pass under the old Stoke to Leek branch, and then up lock number 4 of this ride. And then we head towards the A53, which we pass under again for the second time this ride, and it's at this point we hit the natural habitat of my bike, a gravel surface, with the tarmac ending here. We then head up lock number 5, and not long after that, we head up lock number 6 of the ride, our final one. And straight after that lock, we come to Stanley Road. Here the towpath switches sides, so we need to cross over the road and use the footbridge to go over. Here we leave the village of Stockton Brook and head out into the countryside. From here the canal is very rural, so we'll start to see less people about as we carry on up this lovely gravel surface, which makes for very enjoyable riding. The canal between Stockton Brook and Endon is really quite straight, so with a good view ahead and a good service we can make good time, and we're soon at Endon Wharf, which is now the home of the Stoke-on-Trent Boat Club. The wharf here was built by the North Staffordshire Railway Company in 1905, so a relatively new addition to the canal. It was built so cargo could be transferred between boats and trains, with the Stoke to Leek line running just to the west of the wharf. In 1966, the wharf was bought by the Stoke-on-Trent Boat Club, and it served as their headquarters ever since. The Boat Club, along with the Inland Waterways Association, were instrumental in bringing the Caldon Canal back to life. By the 1960s, the canal had become virtually unnavigable, due to freight traffic deserting the canal in favour of the railway. Thanks to the efforts of members of the Boat Club, as well as the Inland Waterways Association and other volunteers, the canal was brought back to life in 1974 and reopened in its current form. Although the Caldon Canal was in itself a branch line of the Trent and Mersey Canal, it actually had two branch lines of its own, one of them running to Leek, which we'll be using today, and the other one running down to Uttoxeter. And that is why when you go down the canal, you'll see the distance markers are actually marked from Uttoxeter, where the canal meets the Trent and Mersey, to Uttoxeter, the furthest point that you used to be able to travel to. These days the main line of the canal ends at Froghall. There's a little bit of tarmac again as we approach the Canal and River Trust facilities at Endon, but then after we pass these facilities, we're back again onto a wonderful gravel surface. And with a good surface and not many people about, it's not long before we reach Hazelhurst Junction, where the Leek Branch, which we'll be using, branches off the main canal line. To carry on to Leek, we simply need to cross over the bridge over the main line, which carries on towards Froghall down a set of 3 locks. Immediately after heading on to the Leek Branch, you can see that the quality of the towpath really has gone down. In fact, it turns to just grass not far from the junction. But with my 40mm tyres on this gravel bike, it still wasn't an issue. I had to slow down a bit, but I was still able to make decent progress along here. The surface of the towpath stays like this until the canal makes a 90-degree turn to the left and we cross over to the other side of the canal to carry on along the towpath. Quite a steep bridge this one, so do take a bit of care. And then we're onto some cobbles, which is a little bit bumpy. Now the reason for that tight left turn and this bumpy surface is actually because we're passing over an aqueduct here, as the Leek Branch initially runs parallel with the main line of the Caldon Canal before taking this left turn and crossing over the main line of the canal on an aqueduct. Quite strange to see another canal boat passing beneath us as we're on a canal, and also we can see the towpath there carrying on into the distance as it heads towards Froghall. The towpath does improve a bit here. You can see this is a much better surface than the first part of this Leek Branch. We pass over the Endon Brook and then we pass over the top of the Stoke to Leek Railway. The third and final time we cross paths with this old branch line. After the aqueduct, the surface of the towpath continues to be a little bit bumpy until we pass under Sutherland Road, where the surface suddenly improves and we get a lovely gravel path again. As we wind our way the final couple of miles towards the outskirts of Leek, you'll notice that there's not many straight sections of canal here. It twists and turns and follows the contours of the land, and that is because this is known as a contour canal, the route of which was surveyed by James Brindley, the famous canal engineer whose statue stands proud at the entrance to the Caldon Canal in Stoke-on-Trent. While surveying the route of this canal in 1772, he was caught in a heavy rain shower and was drenched through. He was unable to dry off quickly and caught a chill. Sadly, he fell ill and his condition deteriorated until he passed away in his home in Stoke-on-Trent on the 27th of September 1772. We soon reach one of the biggest engineering achievements of the Caldon Canal, the Leek Tunnel. This is 120 metres long, but unfortunately it doesn't have a towpath, so we need to go up and over the top on the path provided. It's a bit of a climb over the top of the tunnel, and it does involve some steps on this side, but they have provided this little gutter to run your bike up as you walk up the steps. Once at the top, we pass through a couple of gates and we're back on a cyclable towpath again. This is where the horses would have walked over the top of the tunnel, while the boats were legged through. There's quite a nice view at the top of the hills in the distance before we make our way down and rejoin the towpath at the side of the canal. And from here, it really isn't very long at all until we reach the outskirts of Leek, where currently the Leek Branch of the Caldon Canal terminates. There is a feeder canal which runs up to Rudyard Reservoir from here, but it's not navigable by boat and it doesn't have a towpath. So we're going to have to find another way there, as Rudyard is our next destination. We cross over what was the aqueduct over the river Churnet and head into this industrial area of Leek. The canal did previously reach a little bit further into Leek, with its terminus being just south of the old Leek railway station, which, if you know the area, is now the Morrisons. We now have a bit of road riding to do as we make our way through Leek. It's about 1 mile of road riding from here until we join a disused rail line to carry on our journey. We first have to pass through this industrial estate on the edge of Leek before heading through some quieter residential streets. Although the streets are quite quiet here, it's not the easiest riding as we have quite a steep hill to make our way over. But what goes up must come down, and we're quickly over the top of the hill and enjoying the descent down the other side. With the help of gravity, we're quickly down to the disused rail line that we're going to be using for the next 5 miles of our cycle.
Yeah.
As we join this cycle track, there is a sign to let us know left to Rudyard and right to Leek. Although if you were to turn right to go towards Leek, the track doesn't go on for very long, as not far from here the railway entered a tunnel, which you no longer can get into, that went under Leek Centre and came out near the Morrisons, where the train station used to be. The track was quite busy on the edge of Leek, with lots of people enjoying the sunshine and walking their dogs. But the further away from Leek I got, the quieter that this disused railway became.
Yes.
The surface of the track is really good. It's pretty much the perfect habitat for the gravel bike. This disused line that we're cycling on previously ran from Macclesfield down to Uttoxeter. It was known as the Churnet Valley line and it was built by the North Staffordshire Railway Company in 1847, with construction being completed in 1849. Passenger numbers began to dwindle in the 50s, and in 1960 the north part of the line between Leek and Macclesfield stopped providing passenger services, with the line being completely closed in 1964. So this section that we're cycling on hasn't seen a train in 60 years. The south part of the line between Leek and Uttoxeter did last a little bit longer, with parts of it being used for freight up until 1988.
No worries.
Some parts of the line have been saved as heritage railways, the first being the Churnet Valley Railway that runs between Cheddelton and Froghall, and the second being the Rudyard Lake Railway, whose southernmost station, Rudyard Station, we're now coming to. This isn't a full-size heritage railway, but a narrow gauge railway running on a 10.25-inch gauge. It runs from here at the south side of Rudyard Reservoir to about halfway up the reservoir. Moving on from the station, we carry on along the old track bed, but at this point we are sharing it with the narrow gauge railway. It's quite strange to cycle up alongside these very small tracks. During the school's summer months the trains do run every day, but as the school holidays are now over, the trains only run at the weekends, so we're not going to get the pleasure of having one of these little steam trains chug past us. From Rudyard Station, it's not far until we meet the dam station, which strangely enough is next to the dam which holds back the water at Rudyard. The dam here was constructed by the engineer John Rennie for the Trent and Mersey Canal Company, and it was completed in 1798 with its purpose to store and supply water to the Caldon Canal, which in turn would supply water to the Trent and Mersey Canal, which before the construction of this reservoir and the Caldon Canal used to suffer from water shortages during the summer months. It's worth taking a small detour across the dam. Over the other side you'll find toilets and a small tea room if you're looking for refreshment. You will also get great views of this reservoir, where the parents of Rudyard Kipling met in 1863 and liked the place so much that they named their son after it. You can also get a great view of the water rushing out, making its way over to Leek, where it joins the Caldon Canal and heads down to the Trent and Mersey Canal. And for me, there was time to reminisce about an old TV show that visited here back in 2006. Before leaving Rudyard Lake, I think there's time for one for the road. That's enough reminiscing for now, but if you want to watch that whole episode, Series 8, Episode 3. Right, time to carry on up the old Churnet Valley line, which runs alongside Rudyard Reservoir for the full 2 miles of its length. And if you want to make sure that you're staying on track and you're going in the right direction, the Komoot and Garmin Connect links to this route are in the description of this video. If you're enjoying this video, please do give it a like, and if you want to help keep the channel on track, please do subscribe. It's absolutely free and it makes a massive difference for the channel. And if you're really enjoying the video, you can buy me a beer to say thank you, or a beer to say thank you for the route, and you'll find the link to do that in the video description. As we carry on our journey up the side of Rudyard Reservoir, we get some great views of the water and of the valley through the trees on the left. This section of track alongside the reservoir, being so beautiful, does attract a lot of dog walkers and a lot of people, so do take care and make sure you've got a bell. The surface is generally pretty good, and again a perfect habitat for my gravel bike, although there are some muddy spots, and I can imagine in winter things might be a little more difficult in places. It's not long before we're coming to the final station on the Rudyard Lake Railway, although not the final station we'll be passing on the Churnet Valley Railway today. This is Hunt House Wood, where the small narrow gauge trains come to the far end of their journey, turn around and head back towards Rudyard. But we're going to carry on, continuing along the old track bed of the Churnet Valley Railway. For this final mile down the side of the lake, there is some access to cars down this track, but it is very limited, and I only saw a few cars parked up. But the bonus of this having car access down here is that the surface of the track is really good, and as we're further away from the main Rudyard car park, there's less pedestrians on this section as well, so we can make some really good progress as we go down the last bit of the lake. And it's not long before we're passing under this bridge and heading past the Rudyard Lake North car park. We can continue up the Churnet Valley line by taking a right and heading up this track. Now as you can see, the surface here is worse than the track we've just been on, and I can imagine that in winter again this could get a little bit difficult in places. But at this time of year, at the end of September, it was perfectly fine, and I really enjoyed coming down here on my gravel bike. The trail brings us out at the small village of Rushton Spencer, next to the Knot Inn. There's also another car park here for walkers, and more importantly, the trail brings us out onto Station Lane, and we have a fantastic example of a Victorian train station to look at the end of this track. This is Rushton Spencer train station, opened in 1849 as part of the Churnet Valley line which we've been cycling down, and closed in 1960 when passenger services were withdrawn from the north part of the line. It is now a private residence. We're now going to leave the route of the Churnet Valley Railway and do a bit of road riding along these wonderful quiet lanes for just under 5 miles. The Churnet Valley Railway trail does carry on a little bit further from here, but comes to a dead end just as it crosses the River Dane next to the sewage works. So we're going to use the road network here to make our way to the Macclesfield Canal. So we are currently here at Rushton Spencer, and we're going to ride along the roads until we get to the Macclesfield Canal, which will join here. The roads are all very quiet single track lanes like this one. However, and this may be good or bad news depending on whether you like climbing, we do have quite a hill in front of us to make it over the top of before we get to the Macclesfield Canal. The worst part of the climb comes after a gentle descent that lulls you into a false sense of security, thinking that you may have made it over the top of the climb. Pulling my stone weight up this final steep incline really was a challenge. But once we make it to this final right hand turn here, we really are past the worst of it, and we just have half a mile of gentle ascent until we reach the summit of this climb. If you do hear gunshots on the way up, don't be too concerned, as there is a shooting ground that we pass by, and it's called Cloudside because the hill that we're coming over here is called the Cloud. And at the peak of this climb, at nearly 1,000 feet up, we get a fantastic view of the Peak District on the other side of the valley. From this viewpoint we have almost 2 miles of downhill, and it's all on these small single track lanes, so do be careful because the view ahead is not always great, and the first part of it is particularly steep. I think this is the first really big descent that I've taken my gravel bike down, and it was really reassuring to have the hydraulic disc brakes as well as the slightly wider tyres than you find on a road bike. If you do most of your riding on flat roads, you probably wouldn't see the need for hydraulic disc brakes on a drop bar bike, but it's times like this on a bigger descent where you really can pick up some speed that having that extra power in the brakes is really confidence inspiring, and with the gravel bike having the extra width on the tyre is even more confidence inspiring. I really did enjoy this descent. We soon cross over the West Coast Main Line before getting to the point where we join the Macclesfield Canal. We join the Macclesfield Canal as it passes under the A54. This is a fairly busy road, and we do need to use the road to cross over the canal to be able to join the towpath on the correct side. And there's also a few steps to contend with as we make our way down to the towpath. But we are soon on our way along this quiet stretch of canal. The canal will take us to the edge of Congleton, where we'll join the Biddulph Valley Way to make our way south back to the Caldon Canal in Stoke-on-Trent. The towpath surface is pretty good at first, but it does quickly deteriorate, at some point just being grass. But it's never bad enough that you can't cycle at a decent pace. We're on the Macclesfield Canal for about 2 miles here. The surface is quite changeable, but it generally gets better the further along that we get. As you can see, this section is really well gravelled, and we're really able to make some good progress. If you're lucky, you may run into this gaggle of geese to keep you company. And if we look back, we can see the Cloud, the peak that we just skirted around, which gave us the lovely descent down to the canal. The Macclesfield Canal was designed to give a more direct link between the Midlands, the Potteries and Manchester. Construction began in 1826, quite late in terms of canals, and by 1831 it was complete. You might notice that this canal is much straighter than the Caldon Canal that we started on. This is because it was built by the cut and fill method, using large embankments and deep cuttings where it can, to allow the canal to take the most direct route possible and to cut down on the amount of locks that are used. In the 26-mile length of the Macclesfield Canal, it has only one single flight of 12 locks. Not far from Congleton, we again cross paths with the West Coast Main Line. And then it's time to pass over the top of the Biddulph Valley Way. The towpath of this aqueduct is quite bumpy with it being cobbled, but it doesn't last for very long. After passing over the top of the aqueduct, we take a right turn and head down the steps to the Biddulph Valley Way. Once at the bottom of the steps, we take a right to carry on under the Macclesfield Canal and south towards Stoke-on-Trent. I have covered the Biddulph Valley Way in a couple of other videos, so I won't get into too much detail on this. But this is an old railway line that ran from Stoke-on-Trent to Congleton, known as the Biddulph Valley Line, hence the name the Biddulph Valley Way. Construction began in 1858, and it was built by the North Staffordshire Railway Company, the same company that built the Stoke to Leek line, which we passed a few times on the Caldon Canal. The Stoke to Leek line actually uses part of the Biddulph Valley Line as it passes through Stoke-on-Trent. It had stations at Ford Green, Smallthorne, Black Bull, and here at Biddulph. We're passing the old station now, which is now a private house. You can see the old platform on the left. We're going to be on the Biddulph Valley Way for 9 miles today, as we make our way from the outskirts of Congleton to the Birch's Head area of Stoke-on-Trent. The majority of the surface is gravel, until we reach the Chell area of Stoke-on-Trent and cross over this bridge. From here down to Birch's Head we have a tarmac surface, which is pretty good most of the way, apart from a couple of areas where tree roots have made the path a little bit bumpy. The route forms part of Route 55 of the National Cycle Network and is well signposted. But if you need any additional help finding your way, again the links to the route are in the description of the video. We soon come into the Birch's Head area of Stoke-on-Trent and the end of the Biddulph Valley Way. From here we turn left and head over what was the level crossing and cross over bridge number 15 of the Caldon Canal to come back to our start point, thus completing our 30-mile loop up to Leek, Rudyard, Congleton and then back to Stoke-on-Trent. We've used 2 canals and 2 disused rail lines, as well as some gorgeous lanes skirting the edge of the Peak District. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed doing the ride. If you have, please give it a like and please consider subscribing to the channel. It's completely free and really does help keep it afloat. If you'd like to say thank you for the video or thank you for the route file, you can do that by buying me a beer via the link in the description. Thank you very much for watching and happy cycling.